so blessed to have him back home, back here with his family, where he belongs. God was faithful through that ordeal, and that's exciting. We've also got food, so thank you for everybody who brought food tonight. We're going to have a great meal. Probably around 7 o'clock, so I'll talk for a little bit. We'll get Todd up here, let him take the pulpit for a while, tell his story, take a break, grab some grubs, some fellowship, come back in here, do some Q&A. We'll see how the evening goes, but it's going to be a good time. So thank you guys for being here. Restrooms, got one in the very back on the right-hand side if you need it. If the line gets long, head through that door, far corner. We've got at least 1 or 2 more back there, Josh? 1? Okay.
And then there's one across from the kitchen.
Oh, the one across from the kitchen. So we got 3. Perfect. That'll work great. Let's see. Do want to thank Josh and Carol for opening your church to us, guys. We're really appreciative of that. Thank you very much. Josh and his wife are members of the organization, Good Patriots. We've had meetings here before, and this is a home away from home for us. So again, thank you. Speaking of that, if you're looking for a church where you want to be around other patriots that love the Lord, here Sunday morning, 11 o'clock, you'll see me sitting back there sometimes other places. Got some other churches in Sandpoint. I know the Purdy's have fellowship there. These are churches that have stayed open in spite of unconstitutional mandates that are telling you, hey, you can't fellowship, you can't sing in church, you can't go to church. These guys have stayed open through this whole debacle. I value that. My personal opinion, if you're going to be under a shepherd, be under one that's not going to sell your rights down the road and shred your First Amendment. So do that, right? So if you're looking for it, Coeur d'Alene, we've got a lot of good churches down there. Same thing. Guys, pastors that believe they need to guide their flock regardless of what government says. Read the First Amendment. You'll learn all about that if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Do want to mention for nonprofit organization, I think most of you guys know that. We've got a donation can in there. Training, education, the tools that we provide the communities to ensure we maintain liberty here. We've also got some really cool items that were donated by some members of the group that are up for raffle, so go check it out. We've got some green tip ammo, some magazines. It's okay, Jane, we've got lots of good stuff. I believe there might be a 1 hour masseuse session in there as well. So check it out when we take our break. Table back there. If it's your first time being here, thank you for coming. We're glad to have you. We've got some folks that came over from Montana. We're glad to have you guys here. We've got lots of out there, trifolds, brochures, tell you about the organization, what we do, some of the training opportunities that are available to you, what it means to be a 3%er, so check that out. New members, if you're just coming into the organization, we've got membership applications back there. We'd like you to fill that out. We take our security pretty serious. We want to know who's in our group. We want to make sure that if we're placing you in a group that you belong there, and that we're not putting you in a group with somebody that might be kind of dangerous or shouldn't be there. So we run background checks. We ask if you've got a significant other, spouse, that you allow us to vet them as well. Even if they're not going to be active in the organization, we don't have to put them on any rosters, but we do want to make sure that the information is secure within our environment, within our organization. So we take that pretty serious. If you're in Bonner County and you need to meet with the Bonner County lead that just stood up, there he is, Chad Catron. And Sean Strauss, our Kootenai County Vice Lead, is here as well in the back corner. So if you need to meet with Kootenai County leads, Bonner County leads, get with these guys, I'll interview you. If you're in Venawa, Shoshone, or Boundary, get with me, I'm your zone lead, Jeff Roberts, so I'll be happy to talk to you tonight. Bob is here, our comms guy, so we've got radios that need to program, there he is, and any questions regarding comms, he's the guy. He'll take care of it. He'll figure it out, he'll answer all your I did want to talk tonight a little bit, for just a couple minutes, about the COVID and everything that's happening right now. As far as 3% goes, that's not generally something that we deal with. You know, our role is to resist tyranny in government. That is our bottom line role. But with everything happening this year, the pandemic, COVID, vaccines, we're starting to see those elements infringe upon our rights. We're starting to enter into that realm where we operate. So, COVID, you know, there's going to be people that think it's going to kill everybody. Folks that think it's not going to kill anyone. And then most of us are probably somewhere in the middle. Same thing goes with vaccines. I've got my own opinion on them. We all do. Selective vaxxers, guys that want to do it all the time, vote early, often, get those shots, take them all. And then people that don't want any shots. No problem. You have that opinion, that's fine. That's not an issue. When it becomes a problem is when the pandemic starts infringing on your rights. When they start telling you, you can't go to church. If you do, you can't sing. If you do, you have to sit 6 feet apart from your family or your neighbor. They tell you you can't go to work. Your job is essential. Yours isn't. Your family, they can go without. that's a problem. If they make mandatory vaccinations or tell you, hey, you can't hold down a job or get government subsidies or go to the grocery store without proving that you've been vaccinated because you are a risk to society. These are egregious violations of our Constitution. When that starts happening is when we have to get involved. When that happens as Americans, it's our duty to not comply with that. There are certain inalienable rights given to us by our Creator, enumerated in the Constitution, that make it clear what the role of government is. When they exceed those bounds, they are acting lawless. And we are not obligated to comply with that. So I strongly encourage you to meet other people, network within the group, within your neighborhood, within your churches, with people that identify with the same values that you hold regarding these issues, and decide how you're going to address that. How are you going to address that when you can't hold down a job because your employer is requiring you to have proof of a vaccine? How are you going to do it when Israel, if you look at what's transpiring over there, where the government's saying we would love to shut down travel and commerce for people that don't take the vaccine, but legally they can't do it based on Israeli law, so they're going to have the businesses enforce it. Well, that's a form of fascism. We're starting to see a huge trend this year here in America going that direction. I believe it could potentially get worse in 2021. I think we could see some really difficult times. So I encourage you, assess your situation. How are you going to make a living if you're not going to comply with what can become mandatory? How are you going to provide food for your family? I've been preaching this from day one as your zone league and for decades before that. Get food, store food, stockpile food, because I believe it's going to become a more precious commodity when we look at a scenario of our nation going down the drain. So please, guys, do that for your family, do it for your groups, stock up on food, learn those self-sustaining. If you have the ability to grow a garden, raise some chickens, any of those things, start thinking that way. Because I believe 2021 is going to be a tough year regarding this. So start thinking about those options. Amen? Okay, cool. Anything I'm missing here? Bonner, Kootenai, anything I need to cover? Raffle, are you running the raffle tonight, Sean? You're going to be man at the table?
Somebody will.
Okay, that's cool. Oh, pocket constitutions. So if you signed up for the bulk order of pocket constitutions, those are in. They're here on site. I think we've got them 3 for $1.
I don't know. I got the bundles for the people that ordered.
Okay, so get with Karen right there, and she'll get you squared away on the constitutions. Another about a dozen of you. Okay, so while you're really here, isn't hear me talk? It's to get Todd up here. We're really excited. I'm personally excited to have Todd here tonight. I met Todd 5 years ago, Sugar Pine Mine, Southwest Oregon, my home county. You know, this guy, when the call goes out for help, he's answered that call time and time again. Have freedom, will travel, right? This guy showed up over and over again to defend his neighbors, to be the line between bad government and good Americans, over and over again. And Todd, we're just blessed. We're honored to have you here tonight. Guys, his story is going to be amazing. I hope it edifies you. He is the epitome, the embodiment of what 3% is, where you stand up, resist tyranny in government, and make that sacrifice. He's paid a heavy price, but God was faithful, Todd was faithful. He's back with us where he belongs. So let's hear it for Todd Engel. Welcome home, brother.
All right, hey, thanks everybody. Yeah, I don't know how much of my story you know, but you're going to get a good chunk of it with the amount of time I've been allotted. How did this all start? 12 years ago, a guy got elected, just about like has happened here recently. And we recognized that the guy was who he was and who he had trained under, and that he was a hidden communist. His name was Barack Obama. We all know that story now. And me and my friends, we began to really watch what he was doing, and we saw how he persecuted the Tea Party movement, the things he did concerning Fast and Furious. He was attempting to destroy the Second Amendment. Then we watched Benghazi, just multiple things. It just, perked our ears up, and this guy is just going to trample us and our Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So, as we kept our eyes open, an incident began to unfold all over Fox News and Facebook. And my friends and I began to watch it, and This rancher, had no idea who the heck he was, said openly that there were snipers surrounding his house, and then he felt threatened. Then we saw some pictures of snipers up on the hills around his ranch. So that really perked our ears up, and then we saw, what looked to be like a small army around this man's ranch. That wasn't enough for us to really, jump in the trucks and head down, but when we saw attack dogs and when we saw these agents body slam a 59-year-old woman from behind, that was it. Now it's full-scale assault and battery on grandmothers. Sniper teams, attack dogs, grandmothers are being body slammed, and it was time to go. All of us live under the shadow of Ruby Ridge. We all must have the resolve to never allow that to happen again.
Amen.
Okay? We've got to dig in our heels when it gets too much and say, that's the line in the sand, and they crossed it. So I contacted a lot of people and said, I'm going down to the deserts of Nevada. And everybody thought I was, plumb out of my mind. It's 1,000 miles. So I did. I jumped in my truck on, went up to my cabin on Thursday, loaded everything, and on Friday morning at 5 a.m., I started the truck and I looked across the valley. I lived in Sunnyside at the time, and I could see Ruby Ridge, 20 miles up the valley. And I just looked up there and I said, this is never going to happen again. And jumped in my truck and drove 24 straight hours to Bunkerville, Nevada. And when I arrived there, it's just this crazy scene. I didn't know where I was going, what to expect. But we're driving south on I-15, and we look over and we see this massive federal government compound. And we're like, what the heck is all those trucks and men with rifles? So we went past that, went out towards the Bundy Ranch, and there was this kind of temporary stage set up under these flagpoles. So we walked over and we listened to Cliven speak. Mind you, I didn't know these people from Adam. So we listened to him speak, we listened to the sheriff speak, and it sounded like everything was good. It's all going to be over with. So about an hour went by, and the sheriff doesn't come back and say anything. So basically we're like, well, let's go. Sounds like the cattle are going to get released. So everything's cool. So we all drive, and we get on I-15, and all of a sudden there's, 20 at least Las Vegas Metro PD vehicles, like going down the emergency lane. And we pull up, we're kind of in the convoy with them, and the I-15 is just shutting down. So we're in the emergency lane, and we get up to this big parking area, and we look over, and there is like 50 dudes in battle rattle, helmets and rifles and level 4 Kevlar. And we're like, well, this ain't over. These dudes are prepared, for war. So we pull into the parking area, and I don a vest, grab my rifle, and we just stand out, and nothing's really happening. The undersheriff comes across the roadway with about 8 or 10 of his deputies. And I'm standing from here to Jeff. There's a big crowd around him. And it sounds like everything's cool. Everything's going to be over with. And so everybody's pretty ecstatic. The feds, the BLM's 4 lanes over, way, 150 yards across the freeway. They're on their side, we're on our side. And undersheriff walks away, and not a few minutes later, a lady runs up and yells out, the BLM is pointing rifles at the protesters under the bridge. So at that point, dozens of us took off running down the middle of the freeway. Just literally stopped the freeway, and we are running about 150 yards down the northbound lane of I-15. And when I got down there, it was just terrifying what I saw. Exactly what the lady had said. There was 24 federal agents in what looked like the gear from Afghanistan. And they are pointing rifles. I didn't know the people underneath the bridge, but they had been praying. 40 or 50 of them had been taking a knee and were praying, and these agents were pointing rifles at them. So at that point, I'm standing down there in full kit and a rifle, and I've got a whole bunch of agents pointing rifles now at me, and a guy with binoculars saying, "There's a lot of dudes pointing rifles at you." And that didn't make me very comfortable. At this point, we're just hundreds of people are starting to pile down the freeway. More people with guns. Eric Parker comes down, and Scott Drexler comes down. So now there's half a dozen, 10 of us with rifles up on the bridge, and a bunch of people down in the wash with some guns. But we're facing, I don't know, 50 or 60 extremely heavily armed guys with helmets and level 4 armor and M4 carbines. At that point, I could see this thing was going to come unglued, and it was going to get out of control. We could hear them on their microphone, and through all the trials, we know for a fact that they did manipulate the tapes. But we heard, and so did, I don't know if you guys know who Dennis Michael Lynch is, he heard it too, that they said we are authorized to use lethal force. I heard it, Eric heard it, Dennis Michael Lynch heard it, but when we played the tapes through trial, it had been erased. So at that point, I knew, man, we gotta get some help here. So I went down, because I could see snipers, probably 2 or 3 different sets of snipers, multiple guys pointing AR-15s, and they're yelling, "We're going to use lethal force." So I moved back down the freeway because I was pretty sure they were going to shoot me first, because I was in, a full vest, 12 magazines, AR. So I moved back down, and then the Nevada State Troopers come down, and I said, "Can you help me?" And they said yes. The things that they wouldn't testify of at trial, this Officer Serena, he came up to me, he shook my hand, and he said, "We're really glad to see you. We're sick of these feds." He wouldn't say that on the stand, but he told me that. So I said, "Can you help me get these sniper positions taken down?" He said, "Yeah, what do you want me to do?" So I started pointing them out. I said, "There's one right behind that white Explorer," I think it was. So he got on his radio, and 5 minutes later, we see that rifle come down. I go, "There's another one right there. Can you get that one taken down?" And he did. And the horses are now in the wash. And I mean, they're screaming bloody murder on their microphones, aiming tons of rifles at us. And Chief Roberts pulls up. He's with the Las Vegas Metro PD. He's a good dude. There was a handful of good dudes that were honorable and told the truth. Just a handful. Most lied. And he pulls up, and he tells them straight up, "Get your guns down," to the Bureau of Land Management. "Take them down." And they did. Dan Love, how many people in here know who Dan Love is?
Yeah.
Okay, Dan Love, for those that don't know, he was the special agent in charge of the entire Bureau of Land Management, this whole operation. This guy is the villain that you see in the movies. He is a dastardly dude. He does all their dirty work. This guy is not a good guy. Even he told his agents, "Take your guns down, stop pointing your guns at these people." And they disobeyed him. So at this point, the Bureau of Land Management, these agents have just gone kind of rogue. They're just aiming all their rifles at us. So Sheriff Roberts, Deputy Roberts, he starts to take control of this situation. Now mind you, at this point, Eric Parker is still pruned out with Scott. They're aiming downrange, feds are aiming at us, and I say to this officer, we gotta get this thing stopped. So I walk down and I can see more agents aiming rifles, and I come back and I grab this Officer Serena and his partner Madsen, and we walk back down the freeway. And I mean, this is all on dash cam, me walking with state troopers. So we walk back down and Officer Serena gets on his phone, and I point out a Chevy Silverado with a guy with a long gun in it, with a scoped rifle. And he goes, okay, well, what's in there? And I tell him, I go, they're aiming that rifle right at us. So he gets the deputies down there parked at the gate to back up, and they go, and this thing is all Indy, but they're still aiming rifles at us. And he goes and the Metro PD officer tells that guy, stop aiming these rifles at these people. And they did. And that whole Silverado where they were aiming ARs and scoped rifles at us just kind of breaks up. And I could see through the binoculars they were mad. Because they knew that I was standing with that officer calling in positions to have all these sniper rifles taken down off of us. We thought we were going to be killed. So at that point, the whole thing breaks up. We're ecstatic, and the Bureau of Land Management goes back to their massive compound, and we can see them. And about 45 minutes to an hour later, they leave. 108 vehicles come out of that compound and go right by us. And there's hundreds of us cheering and clapping and flipping them off and everything else. We weren't happy with them throwing rifles at us, but so they all leave, and the sheriff deputies escort all the cowboys, and they release the cows. Dozens of cows had been shot inside the pens. Many of them had been buried in a mass grave. We now know that they were shooting them from helicopters. We have the video of it. I'm not allowed to talk about a lot of stuff because it's still sealed evidence, sealed discovery. But I will tell you guys some of this stuff. Yeah, we have video of them shooting cattle from helicopters for fun. Prized bulls. We have video of them digging up all the dead cattle that they've been shooting in the pens and just dragging them over and killing them for absolutely no reason. We have video and pictures of trash cans full of whiskey bottles and beer bottles at the government's compound. Mm-hmm. These guys are totally out of control. They leave, the cattle are released, it's an ecstatic time, and we go home. I went and stayed at a hotel in Mesquite and swam in the pool and laid in the hot tub. So we come back, this is now April of 2014, and in 2015, an incident occurs. Jeff is saying Sugar Pine Mine occurs. I get a call that I'm at work, and the Bureau of Land Management has a habit of kicking miners off their property, off their mines, and burning all their houses down, their cabins, confiscating their equipment or burning it, destroying it, and blowing the mine in. That's without a court hearing. So then the judge will rule in the miner's favor, but everything's burnt to the ground, and they go, well, sorry. So what happened is Eric and the guys went and set up and camped on the mine. They happened to be camping with rifles, but it worked. The Bureau of Land Management didn't want to come in and blow this mine up and confiscate it. Ultimately, the miner got himself a court hearing, and he was in the right, and went back to mining. And the BLM couldn't do what they had historically done, which was terrorize these miners. So all of a sudden, there's this organization that is standing in the way of their tyranny. Now, who are these people that stood us down in Nevada? Who are these people that just stood us down in Oregon? So a few months later, an incident occurs in Montana. And I get a call, and they say there's another miner that's in need of extreme help. So there's some of you guys in here that I met there for the first time. So we went there, and we were the first half a dozen guys on scene, and we went camping with rifles on the mine. So when there's guys camping at the mine site, the feds ain't coming to blow up the mine and burn it all down. They will not risk an incident. Once again, that miner, ultimately, months later, gets a court hearing. Keeps mining because he was in the right the whole time. But they wanted to confiscate that mine, destroy his buildings that have been there for 80 years, and take over his property without a court hearing. This is how they work. When the judge got done, the BLM, that was the Forest Service, they had to go away with their tail between their legs. When I got back from that mine, it was August of 2015, I get a call. I forget who called me, if it was Heather Scott or Jared or somebody. And they said, we've got an issue in Priest River. I had to unload my truck. So I wake up and jump in my truck and go to Priest River. And this is something that's just the beauty of living in Bonner County.
Amen.
We show up at a church in Priest River, and the issue is over a guy by the name of John Arnold, who had a mild stroke, and the Department of Homeland Security and the VA said he's not allowed to have guns anymore because he's unable to manage his own affairs, because he turned over his power of attorney to his sister so that she could pay his car payment and his electric bill while he was recuperating. So all of a sudden, that's worthy of confiscating all of his guns. So with Heather and many others and the sheriff, we stood and basically said, don't you dare come to Priest River and confiscate this man's gun. And with that stance in front of that man's house, the sheriff negotiated and said they've backed down. And as I recall, it wasn't a week later, and his gun rights were restored. So these are stands that were being made through 2014, 2015, and then as 2016 rolled around, you guys watched what was happening in the Maui Refuge. I'm not going to go into too much of that right now, but when that occurred and Lavoie was murdered, and my co-defendants, a bunch of my co-defendants were arrested at that scene. And then Cliven flew up to visit his kids, his boys in prison, and was apprehended at the airport. And he was indicted for the Bundy Ranch in February of 2016. That's when huge red flags went up for me. It was pretty obvious that they're indicting for the Bundy Ranch, they're going to be indicting a lot more people. So on March 3rd of 2016, I woke up to my phone screaming bloody murder, and they're doing a national roundup of a bunch of people that were at the ranch. And I didn't know if I was on the list or not, but I had a pretty good idea that I was, due to all the informants they'd sent around me, provocateurs. I did backdoor information from the Cooney County Sheriff's Office that the feds were visiting them and asking about me. So Lavoie's been shot and killed with his hands in the air. I was pretty sure that, if I don't give up, I'm going to end up where Lavoie is. So it's a little difficult to go into that day, how I was apprehended, and it was touch and go whether I was going to live that day. There was times where I go, if I make a right turn here and head back up to the cabin instead of go to my office in Coeur d'Alene, what are they going to do? Are they going to make a felony stop? Or do I have to make the decision just to let this cards play out? And through a lot of prayer, I'm like, Lord, what do you want me to do? Make a left here and allow them to apprehend me? Or make a right here and that's going to end really bad? I knew it would. So I made the left. And I went to my office, and they smashed through the doors of the office and put a Glock between my eyes and said, "Don't move." And the body slammed me and ran my head or shoulder through the wall. Sitting in Cooney County Jail, and you guys have read some of my Facebook stuff. I was presented with the indictment, and the guy, this goofy attorney, said, "You're facing like 2 or 3, 4 life sentences here. And, your life is over at that point." So, I never even spent a night in jail in my life. Now I'm in solitary confinement facing multiple life sentences. I spent about a year in prison, in jail, finally met my co-defendants. Got to meet Cliven, and him and I were in a dorm together. I'd never met him. I've spent 15 months in prison with Cliven. I got to know him, and I got to know all of his sons and all my other co-defendants through this chaos. And I was I was given an attorney who was a colt, just a colt. I fired him. Got another one, and he was just as bad, and I fired him. But now we're 6 weeks from trial, and I'm like, if I get a new attorney, they're going to postpone this whole trial for everybody for 6 more months, because my new attorney is going to want to see the discovery, which is a mountain, 2 terabytes or something. So I said, well, I'll go pro se. I'll defend myself in this federal trial. 6 weeks away, no time to study on how to be an attorney, let me tell you. So I just go, well, Lord, you know what you're doing. I'll just go with this. So there's 6 of us in trial, and I'm sitting next to my co-attorney. He has to stay there, and a good attorney next to me, which is Scott Drexler's attorney. This guy's great. He's a trial attorney. He says to me many times, he said, "I've never been a part of a trial that is so corrupt. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. You guys are being shanghaied in a kangaroo court." Why was the judge doing that to us? Why was she so bad to us? Because Harry Reid, Senator Harry Reid, was the catalyst behind this whole cattle gather. Senator Harry Reid's son was negotiating with Chinese solar companies to put solar farms out in Clark County. Harry Reid and his son had got 50 ranchers off their land over the course of 20-some years. Cliven said, "I'm not going to be removed from my land," and he dug in his heels. He had paid and paid and paid their grazing fees, but what they do is they come in, and Cliven has 600,000 acres. His neighbors had similar sized allotments. The Bureau of Land Management comes in. There's a whole great story behind how this works. And they tell the rancher who has signed the contract, "We found a New Mexico jumping mouse on your allotment, and we're going to close down 300,000 acres. Well, this poor rancher's like, "I have to cut my herd by half." And 5 years later, they come back in and take 200,000 acres because they found a rare weed. So he's out of business. And they did this to 50 ranchers. They wanted to do it to Cliven, and he just said, no. This was never about him not paying his grazing fees. He just said, "You're not going to put me out of business." Everybody has heard that Cliven Bundy owed $1.3 million in back grazing fees. Anybody heard that number? Do you know what the federal government's own attorney from Washington, D.C. testified to at 3 trials? How much Cliven Bundy owed? $810.56. They mobilized an army against him for $8,800. It was never about grazing fees. So why was this judge doing this to us? Well, Senator Harry Reid had recommended this attorney from Vegas to be the district court judge in Las Vegas. He had recommended her to Obama. Obama said, "Yeah, that sounds good," and appointed this lady by the name of Gloria Navarro. Guess who was the judge in our case? Yeah, this incestuous conspiracy starts unfolding. So that's why we were being treated so poorly in our trials. Dan Love. 1 week before our trial, Dan Love came under investigation by the Office of Inspector General for all kinds of nefarious stuff he had done in the past with evidence that he'd been passing out marquee marbles for Christmas presents. He was basically extorting the management of the Burning Man thing that happens every year. Just doing all kinds of stuff. So they put him under investigation. Well, 1 week before trial, we're going to be able to use this. He's their star witness that testified in the grand jury and lied multiple times to the grand jury. So the government takes him off their witness list. We're like, he's the witness. He's the guy we need to question. So we said, well, we'll call him to the stand. The judge goes, nah, you guys cannot cross-examine the number one guy in the entire case. We never got to question Dan Love, special agent in charge, Dan Love. So as I'm defending myself in a 8 to 10 week trial, I have an FBI agent up on the stand and I'm cross-examining him. And I ask him, I lead him, and I ask him one question. Is Dan Love under criminal investigation? And you would have thought somebody ran in the room with a machine gun. The place erupted. I thought I was going to be tackled by the marshals. The judge freaked out. They cleared the jury out. And they stripped me of my right to defend myself. They took my ability to be my own attorney from me and gave it to this guy that had been taking naps every day, who has drug convictions, who is completely incompetent, and he told the judge, I can't do it. And she said, you will do it. And she set me down and told me, shut up. And I was now at the mercy of this guy. So I was ultimately convicted in that trial with another guy. There had been 6 of us in that trial. And of the 6 of us, 2 of us got convicted. The other 4 hung the jury on all counts. So we went back to prison. A couple months later, they put the other 4 back on trial that had hung the jury. And their trial was so oppressive that they had to rehearse. My co-defendants had to rehearse their testimony that they were going to do on the stand without the jury, and the prosecutors had to approve it. Jury's removed from the room. You go take the stand. Let's rehearse what you're going to say, because we don't trust you on the stand to testify the way we want you to. So they bring the jury back in. Eric Parker said one word wrong, and he moved him from the stand. He couldn't testify on his own behalf at all. It comes to closing arguments. The closing arguments, the government goes, the defense goes, and the government gets another chance at closing arguments. It's really a bad situation. The government does their closing arguments. The defense gets up and goes, you didn't let us put on a case, we're not doing closing argument. And it freaked the judge out and it freaked the government out. And the jury came back and acquitted everybody of everything except a couple charges for Eric and Scott.
Amen.
And they all walked out the door. All walked out the door. So at this point, the government's case is collapsing on them. They have been in conspiracy with the judge, with the prosecutors, with the FBI, and they still are not getting all the convictions they thought they were going to get. So Eric walks out the door, goes home. Scott and the boys all go home. So I'm sitting there waiting to be sentenced. Well, we keep postponing my sentencing. Well, then Clive and the boys all go to trial. And their trial begins, and they actually get to have Dan Love on a Zoom call testify in an evidentiary hearing. I never got that. In fact, my trial was so oppressive that while I was up there trying to defend myself, I said the words First Amendment. Can't say it. Judge, don't say First Amendment. Oh, okay. I said Second Amendment. Can't say that. Right to bear arms. Don't say that. I couldn't say anything concerning the Constitution. I got so discouraged that I looked at the judge and I said, "Can I say freedom of speech in your courtroom?" And she looked down at me and says, "No, you may not. Freedom of speech is not, you can say the 4 words. I was shocked. So in the third trial, when Cliven and the boys go to trial, they get to have Dan Love testify because the judge had figured out she's on the losing team. Or she had been visited by somebody saying, "You need to lighten up. You look ridiculous. You're a tyrant." So these guys got to actually have Dan Love testify on a Zoom call under oath in an evidentiary hearing. So that really started to open the case up. We started to figure out all the stuff that they've been hiding. So the trial gets underway, and the defense attorneys begin to demand, "Dan Love said this, we want that information." And the government's like, "Oh no, this is falling apart on us." So stuff starts getting revealed. In my trial, I had tried many, many times to prove that there had been snipers surrounding this man's ranch and trying to kill him. The judge told me after so many objections, "Don't mention the word sniper ever again in my courtroom. You have no evidence that shows that snipers ever existed out there." So I wasn't allowed to mention the word sniper. Because there's jury instructions you can get. If you can prove that they were the aggressors, that you can get jury instructions that we were defending ourselves, we had rifles, defending ourselves and in defense of others. And that's a valid jury instruction. But I couldn't prove it. In the third trial, it starts unwinding on the government. And they have to start producing evidence. I'm sitting in prison, and Cliven's coming back every day after trial, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is unraveling on these guys." And one day he shows back up, and he goes, "Look at this. It's the map of where the snipers were positioned around Cliven's house that they'd hid from me in my trial. 3 different sniper positions with the ranges to his front door. They'd shot laser rangefinders, so they had the distance of the shot on Cliven if they could have got it. And they were around his house 2 nights in a row, and they hid that from me. So the case is falling apart in the third trial. At this time, a guy by the name of Larry Wooten. How many know his name?
Yep.
Larry Wooten. He is the government's investigator. This is their guy investigating us for 3 years. Larry Wooten writes a whistleblower letter and says, "Everything that we were trying to prove was true, and the government had been lying the whole time." And he turns on them. A 14-page letter that just blew the case apart. Case dismissed immediately. All of my co-defendants go home. The ones that are in the room with me waiting to be on go to trial, all walk out the door. I'm stuck in there by myself because I've been convicted. Cliven and all the boys, out the door, going home. Me, chilling, waiting to be sentenced. So this whistleblower letter is so outrageous, we know for a fact I'm going to get relief. I'm going to get a new trial at least. They just let everybody go because they can't have that whistleblower testify. They can't have him testify because it's going to send the prosecutors and the Bureau of Land Management to prison for all of the illegal stuff they've been doing to us, hiding mountains of evidence. He states in his whistleblower letter that Dan Love was attempting to provoke Cliven to violence. This is their investigator telling the truth. So I'm very hopeful at this point. As I'm waiting sentencing, we're writing motions to get me some relief. Like, I want a new trial. If they give me a new trial, then obviously they're not going to take me to trial because they're not going to let this guy testify. So as we're trying to get me relief, the whistleblower is reading all of our motions to the court because he writes another whistleblower memo. And he names me in it. And he says everything that Todd was saying in his motions is absolutely true. And everything the government is saying is a lie. And it was a nuclear weapon of a memo. The judge sealed that memo up so tight that Russ Fulcher has read it, the Department of Justice has read it, and my attorney read it. Nobody else is allowed to read that thing because it's so damning it will send these people to prison. So the judge read it. Obviously now there's 2 whistleblower memos by the government's own investigator. All the stuff I've been trying to prove about snipers has been revealed. Obviously I'm getting a new trial, right? We go to my sentencing hearing expecting me to go home, and she turns around and sentences me to 14 years and sends me to friggin' Lombok. And it just shocked. It shocked the conscience of the legal community that this judge would do this to me. So she sends me off to Lombok. There's a lot of little itty bitty stories that are really crazy in between all this, but I go and obviously I appeal. And we appeal to the Ninth Circuit. And thank God that Trump has put a lot of good people in the Ninth Circuit. So we were very, very hopeful that we were going to get some of Trump's judges that he had appointed. Because the Trump administration was very somewhat involved in our case, behind the scenes. So we get my 3-judge panel on the Ninth Circuit, and I get an Obama, a Clinton, and a Bush judge. I'm like, all right, Lord, you're going to have to handle this because I'm not getting any love from these guys. So here I am sitting for 26 months in Lombok, and finally they get my hearing date. And I'm like, finally. And it's March 23rd. As the date arrives, so does COVID. And they postpone. I'm like, oh no. So now I'm postponed. I'm not even going to get my hearing. Who knows when I'm going to get my hearing because of COVID. So 2.5 months later, they did have my hearing, and they Skyped it. And everybody that I would call on the outside said it was going good. And it went good with the Ninth Circuit. So we're waiting now for the Ninth Circuit's decision. And if you can imagine, I have 8 more years I got to do in prison if the Ninth Circuit doesn't overrule this jury conviction. So 10 weeks go by, and I just call, because I call everybody, hey, what's going on? And my sister's weeping, uncontrollably weeping. And I'm like, well, Mom is dead, or Dad is dead, or the Ninth Circuit didn't rule in my favor. And I'm like, oh no. And 15 seconds later of weeping, she finally goes, you're coming home. Yeah. So weeks are going by, and now I am an unconvicted felon sitting in Lombok still. Why am I not going home? Why am I not being transported back? So the Ninth Circuit gave it back to the government to put me on trial again. Yes, they could have put me on trial again. Just like had the original judge said, I'm overturning your jury conviction due to all the new evidence, and I'm remanding you back to a new trial, which she could have before she sentenced me, but she didn't. But the Ninth Circuit did, and so they shot me right back to the government and said, you can have another shot at it. So 4 weeks go by, and I just got on the phone one day, and I said to a friend of mine, I said, if they put me on trial again, I'm going to take that whistleblower, and I'm going to drain every ounce of information out of that man that I can. And I'm going to shove it down that prosecutor's throat, and I'm going to send it off to the Department of Justice and have every one of you guys all over the country demand a special prosecutor, and and we will seek to put these people in prison for what they've done. And 3 days later, I call my mom and she goes, the government just dismissed your case with prejudice. You're coming home for real now. You're not going to another trial. Oh man, the first guy I hugged was a Hell's Angels hitman who killed 29. I'm hugging this murderer. I want to hug somebody. Yeah, so I'm just ecstatic at this point. I mean, I'm actually going home. So, yeah, the next morning, they come and get me. And there's so many stories I'm going to tell you, but why did they wait 5 weeks to come and get me? If you've been reading some of my Facebook stuff, you'll get this. There was this guy that had lived across. Lompoc is like the unit is 160 feet long and 20 feet wide. It's this terrifying looking thing, 3 stories high. So when you walk in the first time, it's just like the movies. Dude's hanging over the railing and is screaming. It's just this. It's a horror picture show. And so 4 weeks go by, 3.5 weeks go by. I'm unconvicted. I should be home. I shouldn't be there anymore. It would be like them arresting you and sending you to Lompoc to await trial. Totally wrong. Unheard of. The guards are like, you shouldn't be here. What's going on? Why are you still here? So this one guy that lived across from me, he says something to me just kind of out of the blue. He's what's called a Nazi lowrider. They're 1 degree below the Aryan Brotherhood. The Aryan Brotherhood is one of like the most violent prison gangs in the country. Horribly violent. Kill the guards, they're really bad. And if you're a Nazi lowrider, you're trying to get up to that level. And Rod was his name, Hot Rod. He's a Nazi lowrider. So he would see me every morning reading my Bible, sitting outside. I just read my Bible in front of everybody. I didn't care. And they all knew where I stood, that I wouldn't participate in their shenanigans and do all the stuff that the prison world has, just everything bad. So Rod says, hey man, come over here. It's COVID, so he's locked in his room and I'm out because they had to separate us. And he asked me some question, and then all of a sudden, it just leads into Jesus. And he's like, and I start ministering to him just out of the blue, and it just starts flowing. And in 15 minutes, this Nazi lowrider is weeping uncontrollably in his cell and accepts Christ.
Amen.
And I go back to my cell and I go, okay, God, I get it. Now I know why I had to spend a few extra weeks in prison. Because it wasn't about me, it was about him. So the morning that they pop my cell door open, everybody's locked down, and they only pop my cell. And they're letting me out, and then it's lunchtime, and they pop everybody's cells, doors. And I'm getting ready, I'm going out the door. And this guy comes over to me and he goes, hey man, you know why you had to spend 5 extra weeks in prison, don't you? I go, yeah, I do. Do you? He goes, yeah. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. And he was a truly changed man. It was beautiful to see. So then the hell begins to get me out of the prison. At that point, they have no custody of me. They have no jurisdiction over me. They have no control over me. I'm a citizen who can walk out the door and go to the gun store. And they're free. They don't run into this very often, where guys walk out with no probation, no felonies, nothing. So they don't know how to treat me. And I tell them, I want out of this building. And they said, well, you're gonna stay in prison, stay in your cell until your ride arrives. I go, no, I don't. I'm a citizen, like you're a citizen. You can't keep me in this building anymore. And they go, oh yeah, we can. I said, no, you can't. And the one guy goes, if you don't shut up, I am going to say, this is a guard, I'm going to say that you threatened to assault a federal officer and we're rearresting you. I go, did you just threaten to fabricate a crime on me in front of another guard? And the guy completely came out of his skin. And I thought he was going to rearrest me for nothing, for just wanting out of the building. So he starts hauling me down, and I think I'm going to be rearrested. I'm supposed to be the greatest day of my life. And finally he comes to his senses, and he backs off. So then they stick me in a cell for a few more hours, and then they release me out the front door. And at that point, there's guard trucks running around with rifles, and I'm in prison clothes, and they kick me out the front door, and I'm afraid I'm going to be shot by the gun trucks. And then I'm really afraid after they switched a shift change, because it's new guys, and they're like, "Who are you? Why are you outside the gate?" Oh, I'm going to die. So I wait outside the gate for 4 hours thinking I'm going to be rearrested, killed. Guards are pulling up and yelling at me, like, don't get around our car. It was just the worst day ever. And it was supposed to be a great day. But, so where are we at now is that I gotta be careful here what I say. Right now, we are in a position in this country that is going to be much worse than where we were under Obama. Everybody in this room is going to have to start making decisions that are going to be very difficult. As Jeff said, this vaccine is going to start to separate us from our jobs, from our abilities to travel. It's going to start making it difficult for our kids to go to school. And everybody in this room are going to have to get engaged into this fight. I know you guys, most of you already are, but you're going to have to pick your battles, and that will be the stand you need to make. I picked mine. They were costly, but they were right.
Amen.
I made the right decisions every step of the way, and it was a heavy-duty price to pay. But it was worth it. Because now Joe Biden was the vice president under Obama, and he was in the White House the day that we stood in Nevada. And we know for a fact that they were watching it live. And they now realize that people will stand. They will take up their rifles and they will make a stand when the federal government gets too heavy-handed. And that's why they came after us, because we rocked them to their core. We were willing to do what was necessary that day to stop that tyranny. As time went on, we found out that they ultimately wanted to murder Clive and Bundy and then control the narrative. Just like they did with Randy Weaver. They wanted to kill Randy Weaver's entire family and control the narrative. Just like Waco, they wanted to kill everybody and control the narrative. If you can eradicate all of the suspects, they can't tell a story. And with Cliven, if they could have provoked him to any level of violence, they would have killed him and then controlled the narrative. We have mountains of evidence that shows what they were truly up to out there. I don't think that it will ever be able to hit. I don't know if I'll ever be able to divulge it all to you guys, because I think that in all these civil suits that we're going to have, they're just going to settle out because they can't have Larry Wooten testify under oath, because he'll spill the beans on them, and we do know for a fact he's willing and ready to testify. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
So all we can do at this point is just prepare for the days ahead. Obama was bad, But we are in a different world completely and totally than we were in 2012, 13, 14. We are heading into the most slippery slopes this country's ever faced since, the Civil War, the Revolution. What we see on the horizon is that all of us are going to be in positions, or be put into positions like we were put into at Sugar Pine, White Hope, the Bundy Ranch, John Arnold. We're blessed beyond belief to have a great sheriff and great legislators. So, and we are absolutely blessed to be able to live in this county where we have them. Because we're going to head into some things, folks, that we're all going to be possibly standing on that bridge, unfortunately. If Biden is truly inaugurated on the 20th, God bless us all. But I would rather live on my feet than die on my knees.
That's right.
I'm not going to take this lying down. There's no way. And they know it. And they know you guys aren't either. So pick your battles and get ready. There's a story about a guy, his name was Isaac Davis. He was about 25 years old on April 19th, 1775. He had trained with his little private militia in a town called Concord, Massachusetts. And that morning he was awakened and said that he heard that the British were coming. He kissed his wife goodbye, got his guys together, and they marched towards that bridge. It was 4 little girls and a young wife, and all the little girls had the flu. He kissed his wife goodbye and said, "You take care of our girls." And he met the British on a bridge in Concord. And he was one of the first few that were killed that day. And by his sacrifice, we're all still here, and we're all still free because he made a stand that cost him everything. And let's never forget that these things are not fought by childless men. I had a lot of friends at the time that wouldn't go down there because they had kids. They had wives they couldn't leave, they had jobs, and I didn't, so I went. But there's coming a point here, unfortunately, that those bridges are going to be right in front of everybody that's sitting in this room. And just be right with your maker, but get ready to fight. Everybody in this room's got to get ready to fight. Because if you don't, then the alternative is it's worse than death. And I would rather say from a prison cell that I fought than say from a prison cell I bowed. So, I guess you guys want to eat?
Do it.
Thank you.
Todd, thank you. I appreciate it. All you guys, it's phenomenal. What he's telling you, it's where the rubber meets the road for being 3%ers, guys. Greater love has no man than this that can lay down his life for his friends. This guy's driving across the country to potentially do just that, because that's our duty as Americans. That's what it's about. Hearing his perspective from Bundy Ranch and Sugar Pine and Ruby Ridge, I was aboard with 3% during most of those events other than Ruby Ridge. But it's interesting to hear things from his perspective coming over, being here from Idaho and whatnot. And we share a similar background in the sense that we were both, I was up on Sunnyside as well, at Ruby Ridge. And when you witness your neighbors being murdered by your own government, it will change your outlook on what our roles are as citizens. It will change your outlook on the accountability that we the people have to place on government so that they don't run amok and start murdering Americans, because that is their nature. Government uncontrolled will subjugate citizenry. That's how it goes. And when we were out in Burns, when I was dealing with the FBI negotiators and talking to them, we told them, hey, no free Wattles, no free Ruby Ridges. You are not going to murder these people. I believe 100% that Bundy Ranch and the presence of the patriots that went down there saved their lives. If you guys weren't there, Americans hadn't showed up to protect the Bundys, you would have another Ruby Ridge, you would have another Waco. I believe 100% Sugar Pine Mine, Lincoln, Montana, places we talked about that we were at, government would have steamrolled these innocent Americans because we allow it. So you're going to get the government that you allow. Our job is to hold them accountable. So I'm appreciative of every single one of you guys that are here tonight. I'm deeply appreciative of Todd sharing your story tonight, Todd. Very inspiring. He's got obviously some high points, low points, but he was faithful through this. The Lord was faithful to you through those challenges. And he is inspiring others to understand what we're faced with. But you're going to have to make a choice. If you make that stand, and you can face your maker, you can face the bunk in a jail cell knowing that you made the right choice, I encourage you to take that step, to be willing to do what is right in spite of the consequences, and have that faith that our founders had, the guys at Lexington and Concord had, to do the right thing. Because with that, enough Americans do that, we can turn around this tide of tyranny that is just flooding our nation. Because we're not alone, guys. We are everywhere. We call ourselves the 3% of the Americans that are willing to fight for what we have. That's potent. We can get a lot done. It didn't take tens of thousands of men on the ground at Bundy Ranch to save that family. Had we been in existence in 1992, 1993, I promise you, we wouldn't have had a Ruby Ridge. We wouldn't have had a Waco. We wouldn't have stood out there and watched the government burn 76 people alive in Waco, Texas. That wouldn't happen. But we weren't expecting it, that government was going to go down these roads. We know better now, and that's why we organize. We organize to defend, right, brother? Amen. That's right. Real quick before we grab grub, I just got to talk a little bit about Todd's position. So while he was in prison, after he took that stand for his fellow man, he had everything stolen from his cabin. So he's a good prepper. He's a good prepper. He's got food, he's got guns, he's got gold, silver, things like that. All of it gone. His tools, his firearms, his ammo, his food storage, his precious metals. Thieves stole his wood stove for his off-grid cabin. So everybody that donated money, helped out, donated hard assets, chainsaws, body armor, all the cool stuff that we helped them out with, that's phenomenal. We still got a ways to go, so in the coming weeks and months, we're going to be doing some more fundraisers, ways that we can help Todd get back to where he was prior to taking his stand. There is no stronger message that we can send to fellow patriots and to the government than we take care of our own. You're going to take our guy and lock him up, we're going to be there in prayer. We're going to be helping you secure assets and funds to cover your legal fees. We're going to make you whole again. When Bundy was down there in jail, I'm not a big fan of that guy, but that's okay. We made sure we took care of his family, making sure they get their bills paid. That's what we do. And we send a message to government as well. You take one of us out, we're going to back them up. We're not backing down. We're going to take care of our own. So that's important, guys. So I just want to encourage everybody to be aware, be mindful of that. We'll be doing more things to support Todd, getting back integrated with society, enjoying his freedom back here in Bonner County where he belongs. Realize we still got guys behind bars. Jerry DeLumis is still in jail for that. His family still needs support. Keep lifting him up in prayer, doing the right thing. So, guys, just thank you for being here. Let's grab some food. We'll see how the evening goes. We may do a question and answer a little bit later. See if Todd wants to share some more. So let's head back in that back room and get some grub.
Thank you.